Guys, no, reset.
Come on, Richard.
You started with a puppy dying in Nepal.
Yeah. Damn it. Welcome back to another great episode of the Strongfit Podcast. So we are going to talk about the multiverse, where our fanboyish obsession, which I'll be honest, I'm not that big of a nerd. I enjoy a fun movie. I understand the grasps of all these things. I think I spent too much time on 9gag. Shout out to 9gag. I don't know if you know what 9gag is.
I don't know what that is.
So 9gag is think of like a Twitter for nerds. And so it's just a bunch of memes that are posted and anime things. Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. So that's kind of where I keep up things. I read some comics here and there. I'm not a huge fanboy, but
I am.
You have the backstories to all.
I am a nerd. Yes, I'm totally a nerd.
We've been told that
and a geek.
Entering the multiverse seems like they're entering an anime fanboy sesh. And so there's reasons that we have Krillin, which is the free community, the Saiyan, which is
fucking funny.
But nobody understands.
No, because there's a T-shirt that says, train like to beat Vegeta or at least Krillin.
Right, but who is Vegeta?
Prince Vegeta, Son Goku. Anyway.
Exactly.
My nerd friends will know exactly who I'm talking about.
But so as we enter into the Strongfit Multiverse on Mighty Networks, there's a reason that you had Krillin.
Just sideways. There's a picture of Android 18, which I'm sure you don't know who that is. But she's that hot blonde that is married to Krillin. And there's a
Krillin is the bald boy.
Yeah. There's a sexy picture of her laying like this on Akira's motorbike that the guy tattooed himself with. The nerd will understand what I'm talking about. This is the most awesome fetish tattoo I've ever seen. I'm having Janina recreate the picture, just so you know.
I like it.
She looks like Android 18 too. So anyway, whatever. Which makes me Krillin with a bald head. That's another. I don't want to be Krillin, but anyway.
I
agree. I'm not.
So
Krillin.
Here's my question because I'm confused. So Krillin is a character.
Yes.
But Saiyan is a god form.
No, Saiyan is a race.
It's a type of
people.
People.
It's a race.
Okay.
They come from the planet.
Yeah. Gotcha. So we go from one character, which is Krillin, White Krillin.
He's a human.
Okay.
So Krillin was the first training partner becoming friend of Son Goku when they were kids. So they grew up together.
But he was only human.
He's only human, so he's always going to be weaker than Son Goku, who's a Saiyan, but who grew up on Earth. Okay. He was sent to Earth when the planet exploded.
There we go.
Because Frieza destroyed it.
Frieza.
Exactly. And
so to remember all the characters.
Krillin and Son Goku grew up together.
Okay.
And then at the time, Son Goku looks like he's 8'10".
Yeah.
And then that arc is gonna stop, and then the next time you see him, he's like 18, 20.
Okay. So Krillin is for the humanoids, if you will.
It's a base level. He knows how to fight. He's a badass, but he's just not a Saiyan.
Right. So Saiyan is the next level up in the Strongfit community.
That's a race that is actually, they can be pushed all the way up to gods.
So they level up.
They do level up. They level up a lot.
These episodes, I've tried to get back into it. It was a lot more entertaining when I was a kid. I won't lie to you. Like I watched the movies.
That's because you don't understand what you're looking at.
I think that the fights that take 3 episodes, somehow.
They take way longer than that.
Yeah, exactly. My attention span.
They take way longer than 3 episodes.
The TikTok has brought my attention span way longer.
Exactly. Well, that's more of that.
The problem.
I mean, no one can watch the early Son Gokus anymore. The only Dragon Ball, no one can watch them. You'd be like, Jesus Christ, do something. Yeah.
So we go from Krillin, which is like a humanoid, the base level.
How about we explain why Mighty Networks? Oh, do you want to start with that, like the structure of Mighty Networks?
Yeah, I want to give the people an understanding of why we went with Dragon Ball C, because he's a nerd and he loves Dragon Ball C. You've been watching, that's why.
Although I grew up with the X-Men, but yeah.
Well, there is X-Men also. The mentoring program is the School of the Gifted.
Yes.
So we travel from Marvel. There's no DC yet in the multiverse.
No, there is some, because there's the Yellow Lantern. No one understood.
I'm surprised that you haven't done some people just want to watch the world burn, the Joker style.
Yeah, I know. And Tyler Durden as well. I've not finished all this, I agree. I can go a lot deeper.
We're going to get there,
yes,
guys.
Exactly. There's the Yellow Lantern, which no one understood, because I put it as part of, because it's a lantern of fear. Yellow is the color of fear. So that's why I put it toward the workouts, but no one got it. It's okay. So it's all good.
So you'll have some anime discoveries to do if you guys enter the multiverse in short.
There'll be, what do you call that? Easter eggs everywhere. Yeah.
And I think that could drive in a new type of population into our community.
Okay, so let me explain to you why this. I grew up in a, shall we say, a difficult environment.
Mm-hmm.
I had no one to explain to me what being a man meant.
Okay.
I grew up 70s, 80s,
Yeah.
right? So I turned 20 in the 90s. My brother was a drug addict, bent on killing himself, which he succeeded at some point. My father was a coward who, when I was met his third, fourth wife, whatever it was a bitch, and basically kicked us out of his life when I was, 8, 9, some shit like that. But he was a coward of his life who never took care of his kids. I had I barely knew my grandfather from my father's side because he was a political man, but honestly, I met it 20 times in my life. I had no, and like 70s, 80s, this is when feminism started to get bigger and everything. And I think I went through what a lot of, not just my generation went through, which is a problem is what exactly does it mean to be a man? And I found my view of life in Greek mythology, for example, and I still believe humankind is in need of heroes.
Yeah.
It is hard to find male heroes. The male hero archetype has been destroyed thoroughly since the 70s. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger and everything, he started to go down. So if you look, what did I grow up idolizing? The Terminator, Schwarzenegger and the Terminator, because he's such a badass, right? That grand stuff.
Right.
So I needed to find a male positive figure in a hero format that told me that the reason I like the superheroes so much is none of them asked for their powers.
Right.
They didn't choose what they were, they didn't choose what happened. But when they had them, they had to make the choice to use them for good.
Right.
Or not. But that was a choice and you can see how he paralleled me and my intelligence, where at some point I had to decide either I do something with it positive or I get destroyed by it.
Right.
Which one do you want? And with great power comes great responsibility, that's Spider-Man, and then the stuff like that. I saw a world I could belong to. Okay. And I found that in comic books. And I found that in animes and everything, because that world I could understand. Because it's either you put what you have to good use or you become the villain. Either you grind and you level up or you die.
Right. I
understood that because that was my life. It's either I use what I have or I die. So there was a need of a hero. There was a name of understanding an archetype that I needed. And that's why I like the Greek mythology so much.
Right.
Because the Greek gods to me were almost human in their nature. They were capricious, vicious, murderers, rapists, whatever you want. But they were so human in their view of the world. It was like, stop me.
Yeah.
I'll do what I want. So they were good and bad. They were humans. They were like, I got the powers to do this. And if you don't like it, all right, stop me. Which the humans' heroes tried to do. Yeah. Not always successfully, but that was the thing is, and this is why I like the Norse mythology, like, Odin and Thor and all that so much is because, and this is fascinating to watch when you look at the Viking cultures, is in the Norse mythology, they're fucked. Yeah. They all die. Ragnarok. They're all going to die.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything else, the ice giants win.
Yeah.
We all know it. Right. This is a prophecy. And they go into their war knowing at the end, they lose.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. In the meantime, they're gonna kick everybody's ass.
Right.
Knowing that one day they lose. That's very different from the Christian religion and stuff like that, where you save at the end. They go, no, at the end we lose. And yet we fight every single step of the way.
You see that underlying kind of value along Spartans, the Mayans.
Right.
There's the history, I forget the Instagram page, the history something.
I follow that one too. Yeah.
And they were talking about the Indians in South America that kept fighting and fighting, and they chopped off his hands, and he still went to war again. And he said
the Maoris who fucking charged the English with
the Japanese, the samurai,
the Zulus in South Africa who actually beat the English army just with spears one time.
Yeah.
One battle, then they lose the war. But just like
But
the
there was that
Maoris.
one battle.
But there was that one battle. Yeah,
It goes down in
exactly.
history,
right, right. So there is that.
Yeah.
And that's the warrior culture. That to me is the man archetype. Or at least one I could look up to and go like, this is who I want to be. Because on the other side is like, who am I supposed to be?
Right.
My brother, who's the sharpest man I've ever met and who's bent on destroying himself slowly through alcohol and drugs. When you're a kid, it's not exactly the best, thing to go through ever. Or that coward over there, which is still the person I probably despise the most out of all, which is still my father. And so it's a hard thing to find when you grow up like this, to find an archetype you respect and want to emulate. And then you see the X-Men at the time where the X-Men, the second team, not the first team, but had a Russian guy, had a girl from Africa, Storm, a dude from Canada, Wolverine. Then some Americans, and then the women were as powerful as the men. There was an inclusion, and then black, white, blue, with Diablo, stuff like that. I mean, there was an inclusion in this that you could not see anywhere. Because what I had on the other side was a mother, a psychotic bitch from hell, who was a fake feminist, who only made money through marrying, through her husbands, through marrying and divorcing successful men that she destroyed completely. And once they were down, she would divorce them, take whatever money they had left, and move on to the next one. That's my youth. Yeah. That's that fake feminist growing me up, beating the shit out of me, telling me men and all that stuff. This is where I grew up. And then so the world of the Greek mythology of that was like, this is the world I want to be in. Right. So I realized that my only way out was to become one of them.
Yeah. And I remember you telling me we were in Paris and we're walking through that beautiful bookstore where you used to buy the comic books.
Yeah.
And you said that's where I learned to enjoy reading. Yeah. Right. So that was, it's a wonderful. Now kids get so immersed in the video games, but comic books I used to love reading comic books because you have the pictures, you have your imagination goes wild, and there's dialogue that you start reading.
And they're teaching you to put the drawings together. So the drawings is an easy way to picture a world because they're drawing it for you. But then you have to put it together. You start to create the stuff. A comic book is static.
Yeah.
You can stay on an image for 10 minutes and you zone off. And so you're literally training your brainwaves to go back and forth between, then you get engaged and then you relax and then you go back. So you're training your brain to create, and it's an exercise. It's an exercise that is extremely important. And it's not like reading that can be so taxing. Small stuff and you read and everything, which I learned to do later on. But at first, that's how I learned how to read, with comic books. And I learned to create a world inside of me where I was safe. I was safe because there was an archetype of people there I wanted to be with. The women were not fake feminists. They were beautiful, gorgeous, strong women.
Right. Wasn't that the She-Hulk, and then there was the purple one?
Yeah, there were some badasses. Like the women in the early comics were such badasses. Yeah. When they look at it as a sexist culture, I'm like, you guys are insane. There's never been strongest women than in comic books. From the 70s, which was, at the time they were still going up.
Even Catwoman would outsmart Batman all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
And she would whip him with a whip. No, I mean, there's some relationship. I'm sorry, but Piggy and Kermit was a very fucked up relationship. Mm-hmm. He was not the winner on that one. He was getting whooped on a daily basis. Anyway, there's always, but the comic books were a place where I was like, I understand that. Yes, Manichaean in nature, a little bit binary. Even though if you follow the X-Men, those are very adult.
They weren't soft.
No,
it wasn't. I wouldn't say that the comic books were PG rated.
No, and they were not that as simple as people make it out to be. Because if you guys remember Eric, so Magneto, right? He grew up in the camps, in the Auschwitz camps. That's why he starts and wants to murder mankind, because you did that to me and my family. So there were stuff where you kind of understand the guy, right? Where Professor Xavier is more of a dreamer who wants to save no matter what, but then he builds it's such a cool stuff where by pushing down all those impulses, because he's seen mutants getting killed in front of him, people he loved, he's pushing down the impulses to the point where he turns into a supervillain named Onslaught that is almost wrecking the world. That is just that negative part of him that uses the power. And you go because you can't push down those impulses, because that Eric, that Magneto is part of us too.
Right.
Like, you kill my family, I'll kill all of you.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, who doesn't feel that?
I was late, so yesterday, Dea made me go pick up stuff for the baby.
I'm sure.
And I had like this already busy schedule, and I'm waiting at the bus stop. I'm the only guy there. It's the only same number bus that drives there every 10 minutes, every 10, 15 minutes. The motherfucker didn't stop. I was so angry.
Oh,
I felt I would have been,
Yes.
I was like,
That's when you
flipping
throw something at the,
But
exactly.
so you could always relate to sometimes the heroes, sometimes the supervillains.
Right. But those, again, like, yes, we live in society, but we can also acknowledge this is the rule from Jordan Peterson about never let your kids become someone you don't like.
Right.
So we all think it's because, well, we want to have them to have the same value we do. To a degree, but it's not just that. The point, really the deeper point he's trying to make is if your kids become someone you don't like, you will be horrible to them over time.
Yeah.
That's what it means. It means you will not stop that part of human nature, that you will be mean, you will become petty, you will be miserable to your own kids because you don't like them. Don't let it happen, because what his point was, you cannot control that part of your nature.
Right.
And we see that in guilt in women all the time, where they feel very guilty about feeling certain things about their kids. Well, yeah, this is within us. But that was discussed in the comic books in a way that I could relate to.
Right.
It was not discussed at home.
So what about Star Wars?
Oh, so Star Wars.
I mean, now we're going to go through the whole multiverse,
but so you understand. Star Wars, I went with my brother. That's when it was still good. And I guess that's why I'm so linked to it. But we went at night from 6 o'clock, and we watched all three in a row at a movie theater. And I went with him, and I came back home at midnight. I got out, and I was like, how come cars have wheels? And, tires. I don't get it. How come they're not floating around? I was out of this universe for 6 hours straight with him next to me. Oh, it was, last Star Wars, like Return of the Jedi has to be 1980, I think. So I'm 8.
Okay.
Oh, it was one of the coolest experiences for me. Yeah.
So I always tell people, I don't know where you find the time, because you know the backstory to all Dragon Ball Z.
Mm-hmm.
You know the backstory to all of Star Wars.
Yep.
I would say all of DC. Like every single time that there's like a movie coming out, you give me the entire backstory and the history of the character and the side stories of the Amazonians and the planets and everything. But then I bring up basketball, and you know the statistics of basketball players. You know the football, how?
I remember shit, but also I don't watch movies, I don't watch TV. I just remember shit. When I pay attention, I can remember stuff.
Yeah. But so, as we're jumping through all this, Star Wars, because of your brother, the movie was mighty big. How do you find more back history on Star Wars?
I read most of the books.
Okay.
There's an entire universe on Star Wars. And there's a book by Timothy Zahn, 3 books by Timothy Zahn, because what you saw was the first ones were episode 4, 5, 6.
Okay.
Because he couldn't do 1, 2, 3, which he did after, because he didn't have the technology to do it.
Okay.
So he should have stayed there. But that's a long conversation. I'm an old school fan. So, yeah, exactly. So he couldn't do 7, 8, 9 either. So he gave it to Timothy Zahn to write the books, and then they wrote the books about it. They were actually excellent. Okay. And then there's an entire universe of books and comic books, by the way, created around Star Wars.
Created around the first 3 movies.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but it goes way further. If you look at Dune, which is from Frank Herbert.
Are you going to watch the movie that's coming out?
No, probably not. You don't understand how important that. Dune is the first book my brother made me read.
Okay.
He was like, you have to read this when it comes to science fiction. And so it's actually 3 books that he cut down in 3, but then he keeps on going to 9, and then there's a universe created around Dune. It's like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
There's 2 really series, not books, but there's 2 series that created. If you were to ask me what are the 3 pillars of science fiction, I would give you Dune, Lord of the Rings, and Lovecraft as an author. There's more, but they created a genre.
Yeah.
Dude created the entire universe.
Right.
Based on those
more
books.
Interstellar.
And they're so influential. Lord of the Rings, something like Tolkien was a very influential. Right. He created the Dungeon and Dragon. Yeah. He created that. And Lovecraft, like Tulu and everything, that's another thing. But I've read...
That's the one I've never heard of, Lovecraft.
Oh, he's an American. So listen to that one. He's an American who has never published. His stories were published in those kind of reviews they had back then, because we're talking Lovecraft, we're talking what, late 19th century, stuff like that. So he was barely published here and there on some stuff. Maybe, I think it was late 19th century. No, that's Edgar Poe, my bad. So he's probably early 20th century. I can't remember, I have to check. Around that area, right? So he's an Edgar Poe fan, and then he's gonna start writing, and at first that's something like sounds like Edgar Poe, and he's never published or anything. He was a very misogynistic, racist guy. So like, don't look at the guy. But at some point in his writing, he shifts to the myth of Tulu. You have to, and it's a lot of short stories put together that are the creepiest, scariest short story you will ever read. And one day he just switches to that, like he sold his soul to the devil to be able to write. And he comes up with an entire universe out of those short stories never published, mostly mailed to his friends. Because he was published 2-3 things. He died, he never died as an author, ever. Okay. He was discovered in France 60 years after his death. Okay. Then started something that came back to the US, and then he became a cult author. And now he's a cult author. Like Lovecraft it's a genre, the Lovecraft genre. He created a genre of writing. The scariest...
Genre, you mean genre?
Genre, sorry.
Yeah.
Genre is a French word.
I was like, I understood what you're saying, but I'm like...
Genre, the Lovecraft is a genre, but it's a guy who never got... a bit like a Van Gogh, just more racist. Okay. But some of his... Reanimator, like that was the French term, like the guy who... the scientist, the guy is dead, but he reanimates them, and then they became like super dangerous and everything. That's one of his stories. So he created an entire thing there that is fascinating to read. I have the book at home if you want. All his short stories. It's the guy sold his soul to the devil and suddenly started writing in a way that I read that as a 18-year-old and don't read it. I couldn't read before, but it was on your skin. It was so creepy. Okay. Oh, he had a way. Oh, it was so good. Oh, it was incredible. Anyway, so I read all that shit. And so Dune was the major part of this, and I read all of that. Okay.
And when did Dragon Ball come into life?
I'm 17, so it's a kind of funny story. Like there was one Wednesday afternoon, so in France, you stop school on Wednesdays at like 2. And then there was something called the Club of Dorothée, which was a lady who brought the animes from Japan. And it was all Wednesday afternoon. So we had Heidi. I don't know if you remember Heidi.
Heidi, of course. Heidi,
that blonde girl, right. Yeah. That was the first one. Then she goes to Sensei. Okay. Then she goes to Dragon Ball. Then she goes to Ken of the North Star. Okay. At the time where, it make everybody explode. And she went on like that for fucking like 10, 15 years, where kids would not leave their house on Wednesdays because we would watch all the Japanese anime in a row. That was a cult in France. It was crazy. And that was Dragon Ball for me. So it was, you had to be 1990 because I'm 17 at the time. Okay. I'm coming back from Africa and it's every Wednesday. That's how I got hooked up to it, man. And it was so cool because he keeps leveling up and he always loses, but then he comes back and starts winning. And it was so cool.
Right. I find it so, I get most of the TV shows and everything come from the comics and the mangas and things like that. But it's so interesting that being so deep into all of it, you don't watch that much TV.
I don't at all. Yeah. Zero. But you have to understand, by the time I'm in anime, I've read all of Greek mythology. Right. Like I actually...
And a lot of stuff is based off of...
Oh, it's that. Like people don't understand how, like I've read at some point, like I knew like almost everything about Greek mythology, all heroes, their background and like the name, like it was crazy. Like I knew that shit, like really, not as much now, but I knew that shit really well. Sisyphus, the backstory, the stuff, what he did to deserve this and everything. Most of what you see in comic books and everything is Greek mythology adapted to different things. With the Japanese twist on it, which is more with their own culture and death and stuff, like spirits, a lot of spirits gory? Too. Very gory, lots of spirits. Yeah. But they have that thing that is where spirits are not us. Right. And that's it. There's at least the Greek gods are us. In the Japanese, no. Like the world is mean. Yeah. The world is not you and does not want you good. And if you get in the way, you'll die. Which is very Japanese.
Yeah.
If you look at their history, you go like,
history,
it's about the way you look at it. So there's a fascinating stuff there. But all this is, and so I've read all of this, and I'm still mostly in books. But like to a stage where now I just don't have time for TV or movies or anything. It's either I'm reading science fiction,
right,
because I can't just read the shit at the level all the time. So it's either mythology or science fiction or at a high level. But I've taken a lot of distractions out of my life so that I can do what I do better.
Focus on that better. Yeah. So going into Mighty Networks, I remember we were starting it, and there's the very professional approach to naming level 1, level 2, level 3. I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
People would like it to be very fitness-esque and, streamlined. And we were trying to discuss groups, and I was like, well, why don't we just name them?
Yes, exactly.
Saiyan, Super Saiyan,
you said it. Yeah.
I was like, it'd be kind of interesting if it's this kind of weird
level up,
multiverse, right? Yeah. So Mighty Networks, we decided to do it our way, which is going to look a little bit like an anime multiverse where we bring in everything.
There'll be heroes and villains.
So we'll have there'll be backstories to everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I think will be important to kind of read into the backstories. And I think it makes it more fun, right? Because you're going in expecting to learn about lactate and learn about movement. But just like you're saying, like so much with these heroes and these characters, the principles and the values that they live by allow you to connect it almost into training, into the philosophy that we're using, into the states, the nervous
mistakes
system.
They made.
Yeah.
Don't push your impulses down. Like there's a lot of lessons through this.
Yeah. So that I think that was really the bigger message I wanted to get a little bit into this podcast was being able to understand that at the base level, at the Krillin level, it looks very kind of weird and off, but there's so much deeper meaning behind each one of the groups and the naming of the groups and the characters. I have to be Deadpool. Yes,
This has to be.
You just love
it.
it.
Yeah, it has to be. Exactly.
I think my favorite one is where he's like, I just make it up as I go along. I don't even know what's happening right now. But there's a lot deeper understanding behind the characters, right? There's a lot more that goes behind it.
Yeah, why do we like the Joker so much?
Yeah.
There's a reason. There's a freedom that he has that
Especially the Keith Ledger. I think probably the best Joker.
The best villain ever. Heath
That
Ledger
was
the best
so
villain.
good.
To me, was still the best villain ever because the movie itself is just,
I watched that movie so many times, and every time I watch it, I still get like this kind of cringy. I know what's going to happen because he's just
And then you see more stuff of the way he played it.
It's so dark.
He was so good at it.
It was amazing.
I just want to make one last point about Mighty Networks as to also why I was so bent on going on it.